So Shannon Polson is with me this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I really am so honored to have you. I mean, what a national hero treasure you are. And, just I have to start by saying you're one of the first women to fly Apache helicopters in the US Army. You're a veteran now. And wow, I mean, I just like if I ended there and just sat with that for people to think about, that's amazing. So thank you so much for your service. And we appreciate your service and don't take that for granted lightly. It's an incredible, not everybody does that. And to be a woman in our US forces is not easy. So I think that comes with a whole lot of things that we need to unpack. And so I thank you for that and for being here. You're the author of The Grit Factor, Courage, Resilience, Leadership in the most male-dominated organization in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to believe that to be pretty true. And we've got some pretty male-dominated organizations out there, but I think that one tops the list. So it's not probably far-fetched that you have named that book that. So before we get there, let's back up a little bit and just give me a little bit about who you are. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to be flying, Apache helicopters.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on this morning. It's great to be with you from Washington all the way over to Michigan, and I know across the country and on Facebook. I'm Shannon Huffman Polson, and I had the honor a number of years ago to be one of the first women to fly the Apache helicopter in the US Army. I had done ROTC while I was in college at Duke University as an English major, and I led 3 different line units on 3 different continents before transitioning through my MBA at the Tuck School at Dartmouth, and then leading really outstanding teams in the corporate world as well, both the medical device industries as well as the technology industries, specifically at Microsoft. And I've returned to this love of words and this love of leadership with writing and speaking now to companies and organizations across the country and around the world on leadership and grit. And it's a real passion. And I'm incredibly honored to bring stories and lessons learned, not only from my own career, but from the dozens of other leaders that are part of what became ultimately the Grit Factor.
What is the Grit Factor? Who makes up the Grit Factor?
Yeah, well, that's such a good question. And when I started to do the work, and I had already been working with companies for some time, but I had a young lieutenant reach out to me and ask if I would mentor her as she began the same journey down to Fort Rucker and becoming an aviation leader as I had done many years before. And I immediately said yes. And then I wondered, oh, wow, it's been a number of years since I served in uniform. Surely my time integrating into an all-male field was somewhat unique. And so how can I scale the advice that I offer to her? And if I do that work, then how can I scale the people to whom it's offered? And that was the genesis of what ultimately became the Grit Factor. It was interviewing leaders in the vanguards of their fields, dozens of them. And there's, general officers across the services, aviators from World War II to the present. There's a combat rescue swimmer from the Coast Guard, one of the first women Army Rangers. There's a Navy submariner and many, many more. And all of them shared their stories and lessons learned so generously. So that was the starting place. And then I went back and did the background research and supporting research as well into leadership and to management and to psychology, all of that undergirds the work that these incredible leaders had offered their nation, the world, and every single one of us. And then I went back and said, okay, how do we synthesize these lessons and stories into what ultimately became the Grit Triad so that every single one of us can apply it in our own lives and also for our teams and organizations?
So this may be a hard question, but I wonder in that research or while you talk to people, is there a common thread that you see in women in particular who, and because I'm going to go somewhere with that, but is there a common thread or characteristic that makes a great woman in a leadership role?
I think one of the thing to start with is to understand that every leader is an individual, whether they're a
Mhm,
man or a woman, right? They're an individual and they come at leadership ideally in a way that is authentic to who they are, because that's
mhm,
the only sustainable way to lead.
mhm,
And I will say what came out of the synthesis of these stories and lessons learned, because again, I wanted the guide, the grit factor hangs on this grit triad, right? And the grit
mhm,
triad came from those stories and lessons learned from these leaders that shared so much about their own experiences. And it breaks out into, of course, three parts, as a triad would do. The first part is commit. That's owning your past, doing the work to own your story, drill down to core purpose or heart purpose. And we get kind of deep into the research and ways to do both of those things really effectively. That becomes the foundation to which you tether yourself so that you can navigate any kind of turbulence that comes your way.
mm,
Then there is learn and launch. Those are the other two parts of the grit triad. Learn is a deep engagement in the present. That's about building your team, developing the art and the science of active listening, and then building the skills of grit and resilience, which have a lot to do with mindset, actually, which is a choice that every one of us gets to make every single day. And then finally, looking towards the future. These are slightly less defined, but looking towards the future with audacity, the audacity to be yourself, first of all, which is being able to take risks, to be able to take those stretch assignments, to face fear, to face failure, with authenticity, again, being able to be true to who you are within the context of a larger culture, and then ultimately adaptability. And every single one of us has had to be adaptable this past year. That is
mhm.
absolutely a characteristic of every single one of these successful leaders.
I so agree. I've had the pleasure this year of being able to talk to a lot of people, and I will say that the true leaders have this amazing adaptability, but the foresight also to be thinking of ahead and how
Right.
they're going to work with their teams to adjust and be adaptable. The reason I asked sort of that question, and you elegantly put it, is I think it's always important. The first thing you said is I love is that leaders are all different, and I
That's
think
right.
that's so important. And what's also so frustrating, especially in your background, is that the fight that we still have as women. We
Yeah.
teach our little girls, you can be anything you want. And I say, here's the $1 million question. We keep teaching them they can be anything they want, but yet we don't have enough of here's what that looks like. We're getting better, thank God,
Yes. Yes.
but I still like I even this year in an election year where I say, here's this wonderful new vice president, here's what she looks like, you can be anything you want. Here's the
Right.
president of General Motors, a woman, you can be anything you want. It's
Yes.
2021. you know
Yes.
I want to say, I kind of am, I idealistic to say I want to stop saying that, just be.
Yeah.
you know so I appreciate the work that you do, because I still think we have so much work to do to say you can be anything you want.
There is a lot of work to do. And I think that for every person to understand how important it is for every other person to be able to fully contribute their gifts and abilities
Mhm.
to whatever the task is at hand. I mean, all of the evidence in the data is very, very clear that when we do that, ultimately, not only is it the right thing to do, but you get better business results as well, which
Mhm.
makes absolute sense, right? Because you're better able to relate to your customers and to your suppliers and to your vendors when you have a more diverse understanding based on who it is that you have at the company. So that seems to be a no-brainer, but it still does require a huge amount of work. And
Yeah.
relative to the gender issue in particular, is we don't tell those stories. Women don't tend to tell their own stories. We're brought up to be very, I don't know, demure in a way, or modest. And there's
Yeah.
almost a judgment, even by women, of other women telling their stories. So you have to really push against this resistance in a meaningful way, in a determined way, to say we have to own our stories. We have to put those stories out there so that little boys and little girls will see that the sky's the limit for anybody, right? We can all bring our gifts to the table. We can all make meaningful contributions towards that end goal. So telling those stories is
I
a
think
very
I just think you hit on it, because I think it's both. It's for men, little boys, to see that when you're in a leadership role, you choose the best candidate, the best candidate, you know, the best candidate, and that you are doing something right when that best candidate is the opposite sex.
Yes.
You know, whatever.
Yes.
And I love, and it's why I started with your background, because, you know, anytime someone fights, you know, that uphill battle, and it couldn't have been easy for you in the most male dominated, you know, industry organization.
Right.
And I'm not sure, you know, I haven't served. It's interesting because I will say, you know, I was having this discussion the other day. I travel to Israel all the time. It's so common there for women, obviously, to serve, that
Yes.
I mean, it's part of the culture. It's part of it. You just grow up, you serve. And so there's less of a, it just is, you know. And here it's sort of, you had to deal with a lot, for, I'm sure, for men to take an order from you, or to follow your leadership. And yet,
Well, you know, and I would say that also depended on the men, right? I mean, every human
right.
is individual, and so I
Yes,
worked with
thank you
some of
for
the best
correcting
people
me.
I'll ever
Yeah.
know. No, and some of the worst. I mean, it was
Yeah.
both and, right? But the reason that I chose to focus the grit factor, which is not for the military, right? I mean,
Right.
it is, and it isn't for transitioning veterans, but it's really primarily for every single one of your listeners and your viewers and all of us who are facing challenge and change and transition. The reason that I chose to focus on women military leaders is because all of them faced a double crucible, right? They faced not only the challenges of incredible challenges of what the military might throw at them, which included early integrations into purely male fields. It includes combat, right? It includes incredible stresses of deployments, but also they worked within that environment, which sometimes was not receptive to their being there. And that was my experience for part of the time as well. So with that double crucible, that ability to excel despite those challenges really makes this, I think, true grit in a way that every single one of us can relate to and say, wow, okay, that person did that. I can definitely do this. You know, so we all need those examples and to say, wow, all right, if she did this, I know I can get through this. And then at the same time, change that cultural narrative on saying, of course, women have been doing this for a long, long time. This is not new, but we just don't tell those stories. Women don't tell their own stories, and our culture doesn't share those stories, except as brief little headlines in the local news, right? So I think that's something we can do better to try to change that cultural conversation, which again allows every one of us to bring our full gifts to the table.
Would you say that's your sort of your goal? What's the takeaway when people sort of read your book, or, you know, get involved with you?
Yeah, I think that is one of my own purposes, and I really focus a lot on purpose in this book, because the evidence is very clear that the people that are connected to purpose stay with things longer, they produce better results, they're more satisfied in their work, right? So we really drill into purpose, and I do training at the Grit Institute, very specific to purpose, actually, that blows it out as well, which is its own course altogether that I'll sometimes facilitate and tailor for organizations. But when I look at that, one of my purposes, yes, is absolutely to be part of changing that cultural conversation, to say that women have always been there. They have always been excelling in every single role, whether or not they were acknowledged. And now they're doing so even more. And so what that allows, again, is for all of us to bring our gifts to the table, to be able to contribute meaningfully. And all of us have both the opportunity, I think, and the responsibility to serve our worlds, right? Not all in uniform, that's not necessary, but to serve the world, to make the world a better place. And I do think that, part of it.
I agree, because I think that when you are leading a company, leading a small business
Yes.
it's how you speak, it's how you communicate, it's how you team with your group, you're going to have those successes.
Yes.
How do people find you? How do they find you? How do they get involved with the Grit Institute?
Yeah, great.
How do we close? We have people all over listening, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I work with companies and organizations around the world, quite literally. Right now, the virtual world has opened up things so that I can even more of that. And of course, I travel and do keynotes to companies and organizations all the time. I've just done my first trip in 15 months and more to follow in person.
Did that feel like a huge accomplishment?
It did. It was so strange. It was something I used to do all the time, and
Right.
it was a little bit nerve-wracking, and everything was totally smooth. I mean, travel was totally fine. So
Yeah.
it was great to be in person as well and be able to share with another organization.
I have said, like, this is like amazing because I've met so many people and I love bringing people's stories. But yesterday I too had like one of those more normal days, and I was just so thankful. And then I came home and did some 3 meetings online. I'm like, okay, just a little bit of both.
Which I actually honestly prefer. I've really enjoyed how it's opened things up. But otherwise, I'm online at my website is shannonpolson.com. I'm also at thegritinstitute.com. My book, The Grit Factor, is published by Harvard Business Review Press, so it is available anywhere books are sold. And when I do a larger engagement, there are bulk rates, of course, available through the publisher and through porchlightbooks.com. So it would be an honor to work with any of your audience's companies or organizations on your leadership challenges with a real focus on grit and resilience.
Well, I love that. And for those people listening, I have Shannon's website on this link, and I'm going to share it also on my personal page. I just keep sharing the links and everything. I think that it would be so amazing to see you live or Zoom. I love this message. I cannot wait. Your book is on my summer list. So I'm really excited. Yes, I have made a special goal for myself to start cutting my Fridays back a little bit. And I've had, like I said, a really unique year in meeting people, and so many people have great books. So Fridays are going to be my catch up. I have books over here, and it's going to be, so I'm excited to put your book. It really caught my eye. And so I always feel very selfishly excited when I get to meet someone.
Well, sorry, it's an honor and wonderful to be able to talk to you too. Please let me know what you think of the Grit Factor. I'm incredibly proud to have it in the world, especially because it's informed by so many stories and all of the research. And really, it's what I wish that I had known at various points of transition and change. But for all of your listeners that love to read, please pick up your own copies and leave a review. That's always helpful to help 100%.
Those reviews are really helpful. Good reviews.
People find it too, right? And then they can be helped by what's in it as well. So.
Well, thank you so much for spending time. Thank you for your service. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. And we just really appreciate all that you're doing. It's really helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Likewise. Great to talk with you.
Yeah, come back anytime. Share any updates that you have.
Fantastic. All right.
All right. Take care. Bye.
You as well. All right. Bye.